Let's now talk about some important aspects of the 3D model of Fairclough, which is called a three-dimensional model. In this model, Fairclough has actually elaborated on how we can conduct a practical analysis of a text or discourse in the domain of critical discourse analysis. This model has been widely accepted and used by the theorists and practical researchers in the domain of critical discourse analysis. This model actually is called 3D based on three dimensions of analysis it brings in front of us. First one is the description, then we have interpretation, and then we have explanation. Description is related to the linguistic features or aspects of the text, and under this heading or under this aspect, it is believed that there should be a rigorous and comprehensive analysis of the language used in the text or in the discourse, and this might include various linguistic features ranging from the choice of individual words, metaphors, expressions, to the grammatical structures employed or not employed. If half sentences have been used in a written discourse, this may be an important point of investigation in the description. Then some elements of grammar like transitivity, who has been the agent of a certain action being described in a sentence, or passivization. Then we can have text structures in terms of its thematic choices, turn-taking systems. These linguistic features should not be abruptly highlighted. They should be systematically analyzed and should be decided why a certain pattern or certain kind of words have been used by the researcher. And this would later on link to the overall socio-cultural and political explanation of the text or discourse. And this is more concerned with the formal properties of a text, or we can say this is concerned with how people encode their meaning or deeper meaning within a text. Then, as I said earlier, systematic analysis is very important. It shouldn't be a random picking of certain words. Rather, it should be analyzed systematically, because this would lead us to see that how different discourses have been produced and what kind of linguistic resources have been employed. And this might help us thinking about that how in different situations different people would say certain things, and how different listeners or readers would perceive them. In other words, this would help us in understanding the meaning of the textual features of a text. Then the focus of interpretation, which is obviously the second stage of analysis according to Fairclough, is to hypothesize the cognition of readers, listeners, and how they might mentally interact with the text. For these reasons, Fairclough calls it the processing analysis also. At this stage, the focus is on the production and utilization or consumption of the discourse which is under investigation, and how this production and consumption has been ordered. Discourse is not only regarded as a text, but also as a discursive practice at this stage, which is a part of certain genre of text, or which is a part of certain social order also. So, apart from analyzing linguistic features and text features, attention may be drawn to other factors such as speech X and intertextuality, what kind of similar text available to us, how this text is related to those texts, and in what ways we can understand those texts by relating this text to those available texts. What kind of socio-communicative or pragmatic features have been used to develop that particular text. So this interpretation is wider than the description of the text. And that is the point where we start relating a text to its context, both verbal context as well as the socio-cultural or political context. There can be a criticism on interpretation stage because in a certain text or discourse there may be certain factors which may not be clearly defined. Certain factors related to cognition may be absent, and that might mislead an interpreter or a reader to understand the key contextual realities, which might be helpful to understand the deeper meanings or embedded meanings of the text. However, this kind of criticism is being deeply investigated by various researchers on CDA these days. And then in interpretation stage, we also seek to show how wider social and cultural context and power relations are embedded within it. At the third stage, which is the explanation stage, we relate the discursive practices with the social practices. And in other words, we try to answer how a certain kind of particular discursive practice or certain means of the production of a certain text were adopted within its broader social context. What kind of social realities compelled people to say what they said? What would have pushed them to say that? And what kind of hidden ideologies, identities, or agendas were there in the mind of a certain speaker or a producer of a text when he actually produced a certain text? So it actually relates a text or discourse with the outer world, with actual real world social realities, which may be playing with the mind of the speaker or the writer when he produced a certain text. And that, frankly speaking, is the key concern of a good critical analysis of discourse these days. Critical discourse analysis actually emphasizes heavily on this aspect because that's when we say critical discourse analysis, we actually mean socially critical. So this is the social, political, ethical purpose or moral purpose which the proponents of critical discourse analysis claim to serve. Therefore, this is probably the most important stage of an analysis, and most of researchers who understand this would deal the analysis of discourse as at this stage more carefully as compared to previous stages. And there could be a critique here which involves ideological function of the misrepresentation of a text, because there could be certain ideological agendas which can sustain certain social arrangements or power relationships, as we have already discussed that there are certain ideologies, identities embedded in the text. So at this stage we try to decode that what kind of ideologies or sustenance of power or power relations or struggle of power has been proposed or embedded in a certain text. If you just quickly look at this image in front of you, this would give you a quick survey of Fairclough's model. We have a text in the middle of, in the innermost middle box. Then we have a discursive practices, text production and consumption influencing it in the slightly bigger block, and then there is a socio-cultural practice, the macro context which everything happens. If you see the arrow, description is closely related to text, and then it is also related to interpretation and explanation because it's the base of everything, but description is straightforwardly related to the text. Then we have its interpretation, which combines text and discourse practice. Then we have explanation, which combines discourse practice and social practice. Why a certain mode of discourse or certain idea of discourse was produced, and under which sociocultural reality it was produced or reproduced or enacted, or what kind of socio-cultural, political or historical ideology it embodies. What further debate can be reached through this model? Fairclough considers language and order of discourse as two central forces in any critical discourse analysis, because language we use and how it is ordered in a kind of discursive practice are the key concerns. Then intertextual analysis, relating a text to previous texts and to other texts in the same domain, is also a key element of analysis in a critical discourse analysis. Then language use as a discourse, which Fairclough considers, and it is also social theoretically informed way as a form of social practice. So discourse is not a piece of language only. When we use a certain discourse, it becomes a part of social practice, and there should be a suitable theory of knowledge, language to analyze such a discourse. Language use is always socially constituted, which embodies certain identities also. And when we say it is constitutive socially, it is not only constitutive in a traditional way, it embodies certain previously said identities, but it is also constitutive in a creative way also, because it can involve innovative ideas.